looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. Dopamine, the pleasure chemical which gets released when we are having fun, eating spicy food, canoodling with our loved ones, scoffing chocolate, or even receiving lots of likes from a recent Facebook post. And Hollywood are no strangers to using that dopamine lever in your brain, as they like nothing more than the feedback and hype of a box office hit. So no sooner do they get the financial thumbs up that the movie's been a success, their aim is to juice that dopamine and get your bum back on the cinema seat in a couple of years and ensure the studio gets more of your money. You see, for all its artistic creators, from the writers to the directors to the set designers to the actors, even to lunch lady Doris who makes the dinner for everyone on set, Hollywood is all about making money. It's a cash-generating business, and that business, although driven by art and creativity, needs you in your seat and handing over your dollars, yen, euros, pounds, or whatever currency is in your pocket. Now, for the majority of the time, Hollywood is taking gambles on scripts and putting movies out which it hopes will strike a chord and become successful, and when one of them does, the first thing the studios want to hear is one word: sequel. And they want that sequel quite simply because it's now an established brand, and like all established brands, they're designed to pull you back in and make you buy more. So the aim is to get you back in the cinema, get your bum on the seat, and ensure you're going to be there when film number 2 comes out. Sequels and blockbusters are as important as the heavyweight boxing division in boxing, the Premier League in football, or anything where something makes a lot of money, because that money, not only does it go into the chief executives and studios' pockets, but it can filter down into other projects, and it ensures that for every film franchise which makes hundreds of millions of dollars, some of that money then goes to help financing future projects, as well as keeping the studio solvent and the aforementioned shareholders happy. Sequels aren't just great for fans because they can tell more story. They're something which studios bank on and place financial forecasts and balance their budgets on, get their streaming hits on, internet clicks, and generally love the type of hype and guaranteed, sometimes, success they produce. Now, there are plenty of good sequels, and there's an even bigger glut of bad sequels, but one thing all sequels have in common is that the studios are hoping to yank that dopamine lever, which sits in your substantia nigra and the ventral tegmental area of your brain. It's also a yank on trust, expectation, and devotion, but most of all, it's yanking hard on that dopamine lever because it knows that you are going to want to repeat the experience you had all those years ago when you watched the first movie. So for today's video, let's look at dopamine, see how your brain absorbs memories and experience through neuro-linguistic programming, and look at Hollywood's sequel machine and how it works and fails in frustrating measures. Right then, let's crack on. First of all, what is dopamine? Well, according to the Cleveland Clinic, dopamine is a neurotransmitter made in your brain. It plays a role as a reward center and in many body functions such as memory, movement, motivation, mood, attention, and more. So, dopamine is a type of monoamine neurotransmitter made in your brain via the hypothalamus and acts as a chemical messenger communicating messages between nerve cells in your brain and the rest of your body. The main functions of dopamine are movement, memory, pleasure, reward and motivation, behavior and cognition, attention, sleep and arousal, mood, learning, and lactation. Dopamine also plays a crucial part in the fight or flight mechanism, and on top of that, the marvelous dopamine also causes blood vessels to relax. At low doses, it acts as a vasodilator or constrict, as in high doses, it acts as a vasoconstrictor. It also increases sodium or salt and urine removal from the body, reduces insulin production in your pancreas, slows gastrointestinal content movement and protects your gastrointestinal lining, and it reduces lymphocyte activity in your immune system. Dopamine is made in the hypothalamus, which is a crucial part of your endocrine system. The hypothalamus. It's the main link between your endocrine and your nervous system. Your hypothalamus keeps your body balanced and in a stable state called homeostasis. In other words, homeostasis is a self-regulating process in which a living person can maintain internal stability while adjusting to changing external conditions. So your central nervous system is always communicating with the hypothalamus, and this little part of your brain helps maintain body temperature, blood pressure, hunger and thirst, sense of fullness when eating, mood, sex drive, and sleep. And the hypothalamus also produces somatostatin. This hormone prevents the secretion of several other hormones, including the growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, and of course, insulin. All in all, the hypothalamus is a pretty amazing and crucial part of our bodies, and it's only about the size of a small nut. But how does this dopamine hormone affect pleasure, and how am I bringing it into movies? Well, dopamine is a huge part of your learning and reward system. The system is designed from an evolutionary standpoint to reward you when you're doing the things you need to do to survive, i.e. eat, drink, compete to live and reproduce. As humans, our brains are hardwired to seek out behaviours that release dopamine in our reward system, as we, as humans, operate on the pleasure-pain principle, and that means we seek out pleasure and we avoid pain. Now, of course, we have come a long way since cooking buffaloes in a cave and dragging people by the hair so we can reproduce and become hunter-gatherers, and so there are many more methods in the modern world of getting pleasure from eating, sex, video games, movies, food, alcohol, drugs, dancing, music, masturbation, vaping, exercise, going to sports matches, and so many more. So, all in all, when you're doing something pleasurable, your brain releases a large amount of dopamine and you feel good, and you seek more of that same feeling which made you feel good the first time you initially did it. And this is where we come to movies, because movies work in a similar way than, let's say, takeaway junk food does, because when we eat junk food with all its chemicals and processed tastes, our brains drip with dopamine, and therefore, when you see a film which hooks and entertains you, it's the same philosophy in terms of reward and gratification, and when a sequel is dangled and offers even more, you want to see it. You see, movies are complex things to our brains because they're giving us so many things at the same time. They're giving us music, dialogue, characters that we fall in love with, actors that we fancy, protagonists that we care about, villains that we don't like or frightened of, set pieces which make us happy, accelerate our heart, or they make us cry. And, well, generally, movies run us through the gamut of feelings which snag on different hormones and moods. But if you are focused in a good movie, you're enjoying yourself, and this means you get more dopamine. Now, in a video I did a while back about the movie Seven, I talked about something called neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming is basically how we interpret information, language, and other processes into our thinking. Let me simplify it. You see, let's say you watched a great movie like, I don't know, Jaws, or the aforementioned Seven. If I were to cut your brain open after watching these films, you wouldn't find pictures or shapes or slides in there of the movie you've just watched. We wouldn't even know you'd seen it because everything is stored in your memory centre, the neocortex, via electrical signals and hormone releases. And this is because we all store, interact and absorb the world through our five senses, and when watching a movie, we are watching, listening, and sometimes, if you're eating loads of popcorn, tasting something, and our brain interprets the heartache, humour, horror, and all the little things around you, like the lighting and the stuff you're eating, as it happens, and these things we see, feel, and taste engages us, gets our heart rates up, and changes our mood. After all, there's a reason we pay to watch people like Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, because they're pretty hot and gorgeous people, and they make us feel happy. And there's a reason why we love a good horror, comedy, or action flick, because they provoke strong emotions and excitement or produce a physical reaction like a laugh. Because what we interpret and store in our brains is vivid, because when it comes to the eyes and ears, these are the primary information interpreters in neurolinguistic programming, because the information we receive is so vivid. After all, if I was to show you a video of a dog being tortured, and I would never ever want to watch something so horrible myself, it would stay with you because your neocortex takes on all those vivid sights and sounds and stores them in near upsetting photographic detail. Now, to your brain, that's just electrical signals and synaptic responses, but to you, it forms as pictures and memories in sights and sounds. So now we know that movies really engage the brain, so when something chimes with an audience, the premise and basic psychology is that the audience who have given the studio a box office tally of, say, I don't know, over $1 billion, because the studio knows that audience is going to come back because they know that movie hit all the right dopamine notes, entertained them, lured them into this new fantastical fictional world, and now not only will they spend money on merchandise and watch spin-off shows, but you'll be back like the way you head back to McDonald's when the latest limited edition burger comes out, the second the sequel comes out, because you want to go through that experience again with those characters, and you want Hollywood to yank on that dopamine lever.
Amazing.
Basically, the movie makes you feel something, and now Hollywood have got a hook in there. They can keep levering that and bringing you back because they know you love that product. After all, it's really hard to find the elusive movie which makes lots of money. So when we get something like, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Barbie, Jaws, or even Fast and Furious, playing that reward hormone card is a surefire way to bring you back into the cinema and get some shareholder happiness. It's not too far off the experiments that were conducted by Christian Lucia when he had the mice in the lab and he would get the mice to press on a lever or a button, and when they did, they would get a treat. The experiment showed that the more the mice pressed on it, the more treats they got, so therefore the mice kept pressing it again and again. When that lever was switched and they got an electric shock, the mice stopped doing it. It was basic reward behaviour. Something makes them happy and makes them feel good and releases dopamine, they go back to it. Once that stops, they don't bother. And with a sequel, it's very much the same thing. It's got all your favourite characters, lots of excitement you're familiar with, and if you pay to watch it, you're going to get a real great treat and a nice big dopamine hit. However, as I mentioned at the start, sequels are notoriously inferior, so why do we bother? Why do we go back? Why, time and time again, do we pay money only to see disappointing results? Well, not all sequels are bad, and some can be considered even better than the original. I'm looking at you, Aliens, and I suppose Terminator 2, but the sequel is about story continuation as well as familiar faces and a comfy experience we already know the conventions of. After all, if you enjoyed Saw and all its torture and cruelty, then you will want more of the same but something more intense. Now, obviously, you're not going to watch Saw if this upsets you, but if you're a gorehound, you aren't going to watch Saw 2 to number whatever because you want philosophical enlightening. You're after scares, gore, suffering, the ingenuity, the twist, and of course a bit of developing story. Basically, like a soft drink or a burger, you're into a particular brand, and, much like your favourite soft drink or burger, the dopamine hit is guaranteed, familiar tasting, established to your senses, and thus your excitement of having the experience recreated should make the second hit much more enjoyable. We are creatures of habit, and when it comes to enjoyment and dopamine rewards, taking a gamble isn't always a good psychological idea, and we want something that we know is going to make us happy and we are already very fond of. And it's that philosophy which led me to Chicken Run 2 Dawn of the Nugget the other night when me and Mrs. Crowe sat down to watch the Netflix sequel to Aardman's 2000 original. Except upon watching what I knew would be a fascinating stop-motion movie where Ginger, Rocky, Babs and the gang would entertain me with some light humour and inoffensive jokes, I was left bitterly disappointed. You see, whilst I want the characters and peculiarities of familiar faces and the protagonist who made an impact on me 24 years ago, I also want them to bring something new to the table. So I'm getting the dopamine reward of seeing all the familiar markers such as the characters, the creature design, the voices of someone like Jane Horrocks, but the film content underwhelmed me because all it did was recreate an experience I'd already had, and inferior this time, instead of offering something new. Now, like I said, we want fun with something we know has already entertained us, but when it comes to movies, we also crave something new. In Dawn of the Nugget, the movie repeats all the same beats as the first film. Yes, the chickens have to break into somewhere rather than out of, but there's a large group of chickens in danger again. One is killed off screen, but we hear the slaughter again. It's being diced into nuggets this time rather than being beheaded like in the first film. The chickens are set to become food again. They're fighting Cheryl Tweedy again. The husband of Cheryl Tweedy is a daft simp again. The chickens fight for freedom against the odds again. Cheryl Tweedy gets humiliated again, and the food production is halted again. Dawn of the Nugget pulls hard on nostalgia, but although they up the Mission Impossible style feel and give Cheryl Tweedy a mega high security base like a Bond villain, the film activates the excitement upon seeing we're getting a sequel, but upon checking in with Ginger, Rocky and the gang, the dopamine level for me went back to neutral when the film became very much a carbon copy of what I'd already seen. Had they left out Cheryl Tweedy and maybe focused on the island and a new group of chickens and some romances or some relationships and some resource arguing, or maybe they had to get a raid just for grain or something, the film would have offered the lovable familiarity I crave, but also a fresh new feeling. It's a problem superhero films are experiencing right now as, following multiple bombs, there appears to be apathy as repetition is dampening the reward. And reward here is the key theme because when it comes to seeking out what we want in a movie, dopamine, as I said at the start, is the reward hormone. And if we're not getting the reward from what's being offered, then, much like Lucia's mice when they were given electric shock treatment instead of treats, we're gonna stop pushing that dopamine button. Something like Harry Potter's a little different, as there was a pre-built fan base who wanted to see all the books on screen, so even if there's a duff film along the way, those fans are going to come back because they love the books and want to see the story they already know progress across the silver screen. And for other sequels, such as the slasher genre, where films like Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street have seen sequels up to double figures, the whole point is a junk food movie where we just see annoying teens getting sliced up. No one wants Dostoevsky in Nightmare on Elm Street. You just want to see Freddy quipping, slicing up kids, and that's pretty much it. Yet for other films, the sequel journey isn't easy, and fans want what they know, but still demand those other highs and lows, and I mean the emotion for characters and adrenaline-inducing tension or action scenes, but they want something which isn't just more repetition. Fast and Furious is finding this out as, after 10 Fast films and a Hobbs and Shaw movie, box office takings have now started to tank. Now there's always fatigue for everything if it goes on long enough, and that's the same if you ate your favourite food every night. Eventually it won't be your favourite food anymore, it will just become a chore. And human beings are primed to find new experiences as per curiosity and seeking of pleasure. But our reward levers are not always easily pulled. Right from the sequel's teaser trailer, which offers us ominous music, glimpses of big set pieces and the faces of familiar characters, the movie is all about tapping into that neocortex of memories and basically squeezing your hippocampus, which is nothing to do with the student digs for hippopotamuses, but actually one of your main memory centres, and getting you back into the cinema on the promise that this new experience is going to make you feel like you did when you watched the first movie, but way more better. We interpret through our senses and we remember how we felt due to that storage and interpretation of what we experienced via our five senses. It's why we prickle when we remember some people and melt when we think of others we've met in our lives. Our minds recall faces, touch, tastes, sounds, and we remember our mood or state of arousal. And take Indiana Jones, for example, when the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull trailer came out. The trailer crescendoed with the music and whip crack, as well as Indy's silhouette. So, even though Harrison Ford looked way too old and the movie trailer wasn't amazing, our nostalgia banks were milked as we remembered how we felt sitting in the cinema watching the previous movies, because the images and noises were so potent and it put us into such a state of enjoyment by yanking on that dopamine lever.
Amazing.
The visions and sounds of the cinema all stay with us. So do some of the other memories, like eating popcorn while our parents sat beside us. Our minds interpret via the senses, and we remember emotive moments via these memories of images and sounds and tastes and so forth. In our brains, all these things are just electric impulses, but to us, we can feel memories as if they were playing out in our minds. And the best way to jog someone's memory and get into their wallet, if you're a studio, is to offer more of the same emotive absorption and have a good yank on that dopamine lever.
Amazing.
Movies are like hypnosis at times. They cut off the outside world and put us into a captivated trance where we absorb, fall in love, get our hearts broken, and invest in the portrayal of a character who we can relate to. And the sequel is all about the studio saying, "Gotcha, now come in, sit down, give me your money, and enjoy what we've made. Oh, you're going to enjoy it, because we've got into that nostalgia bank." Now, of course, dopamine isn't the only reason we watch movies, but like anything we do for pleasure, reward, and entertainment, our brains love a good hit of the pleasure hormone, and when you stimulate memory, endocrine systems, and something which pleases the senses, our brains want more of it. In the psychiatric wards I used to work, we always used to tell people who wanted to hurt themselves to listen to music as a form of distraction, because music targets multiple parts of the brain and your favourite songs recall and change moods in an instant. After all, if you're at a Christmas party and it's time to start dancing, you're not going to put on Everybody Hurts by REM. And if you went to a funeral and it was very sad and the coffin was coming down the aisle, you wouldn't exactly start playing I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, unless you have a wicked sense of humour, I suppose. Because music is all about mood through the senses, and loud blasting music in the headphones, for the people on the ward I'm talking about, creates endocrinal switches in just a second, and someone who feels depressed can go to a completely different state via the memory and sounds and triggers from those noises. And movies are the same for both distraction and changing your mood. How many times have you watched a movie and gone from one emotional state to another? How many people say, "Oh, I can't watch that film again, it makes me cry," or "I'm never watching that again, it was too violent, it really upset me"? And of course, all movies themselves are loaded with noises and fast edits which are designed to make your senses trip out and really tap that dopamine, raise your heart rate, or, if it's a horror, make you apprehensive and nervous. It's just a shame that, for me, Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget got that yank on my dopamine lever,
Amazing.
but it didn't offer anything new in terms of story, character, and left me feeling a little bit flat about the whole thing. Anyway, that's it for this week's video, so remember that psychology is cool. Please like, share, and subscribe, or even leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video, and as ever, until next time, I'll catch you later.
You're gonna need a bigger. Amazing.